I want to play you some audio. I played this, I think, either earlier in this hour or in the last hour. But Fox News is making a lot of hay out of this. This is Kamala Harris and Jussi Smollett.
Down with deportation, up with education. Down with deportation, up with education.
So it's rather cringeworthy watching Kamala. I posted this to my X feed at Dan Manda's show, where the chant is down, down with deportation and up with education. Well, you know, for the border czar, that's not necessarily a good look. Fox News is all over this morning. In fact, this news with Jussi Smollett adds another interesting wrinkle or layer to all of that. But, you know, to me, it just all kind of checks out.
You know, this is part and parcel of Kamala Harris's radical history. Just like you and I spoke about a few weeks ago with her ACLU survey, this incident and this instance is more of the same, and as Americans learn more about Kamala Harris's radical agenda, they are going to be turned off by this. This was the law enforcement official of the state of California actually flouting the law, organizing with protesters and activists to say that she did not support the laws that are on the books. And as president, you are the chief law enforcement official of the United States, hired by the American people to carry out the law, and it is proof to voters that she will not uphold the law. She has no desire to secure the border and to create a permanent second class of illegal alien citizens who can then be involved in our democratic processes.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of Republicans, including, by the way, yours truly, have been saying that, all right, so once people finally figure out who Kamala Harris is, then Republicans, or I should say the American people, will vote for Donald Trump. We're seeing polls that still favor Kamala Harris. I'm not buying the polls. We're also seeing polls in battleground states, depending on the state we're talking about, where Donald Trump is pulling ahead. But, I mean, what do you think the American people, specifically independents, what are they going to figure out between now and Election Day? She's not going to do any interviews. I think that's obvious, or at least any real interviews. Trump's not going to do a second debate. We'll get into that in a second. And clearly, she's not going to do any press conferences. And so I don't see what else the American people are going to learn about Kamala Harris that they don't already know, unless you think there's going to be some sort of an October surprise. But I mean, what else do they need to know?
Well, the American people aren't going to learn anything from Kamala Harris. We saw it with the CNN exchange with her surrogate, who said, oh, she's too busy to do interviews. She's too busy to take questions.
Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're seeing is Kamala Harris hiding from the press, even the press that would be friendly to her, because we see people like Jake Tapper asking tough questions of Kamala Harris, and she doesn't want those tough questions asked because she's not especially good at answering them. But I think it is up to the Trump campaign and to the Republican message machine to find these instances, like this video that we've seen that came out yesterday, and others, because again, and we've talked about this a lot, Dan, people are just now tuning in. Early voting has already started in Virginia. We're on day 3, and I'm getting people who come up to me at early voting locations to say, you know, I didn't know this about Kamala Harris. Our friends on the other side, the Democrats passing out sample ballots, are trying to say, oh, Kamala Harris doesn't have any authority. She's only the vice president. Once she gets elected, she'll do what she really wants to do. And now we're seeing what she really wants to do. She wants to create a permanent class of millions of illegal alien citizens who can be involved in our democratic processes. She wants to subvert the law when she was the chief law enforcement agent in California. This is absolutely outrageous, and more Americans are going to learn more about her, not from her, but from videos like what you played here.
You know, it's interesting. You are there in the belly of the beast in Virginia, of course, outside of Washington, D.C., and it is day 3 of voting. And you texted me a story yesterday where turns out you guys caught somebody removing Donald Trump yard signs. And Apparently now I'm looking at the text now, caught red-handed. This Arlington liberal was caught pulling Trump Vance yard signs up from the courthouse early voting location and throwing them away on Saturday. And you guys put out the call, help us identify this person, and it's a her. And so I guess number one, is that breaking the law in Virginia? That's number one. And number two, you asked for help in identifying this person pulling the Trump Vance yard signs up from the courthouse. Have you identified that person?
Well, Arlington Democrats claim to be the party of tolerance. And I can guarantee you, Dan, nobody in your listening audience lives in a place like Arlington. Not even your downtown Nashville voters live in a place like Arlington. These are overwhelmingly white, progressive, federal employees, and they believe that their viewpoint is the only viewpoint that exists. I'm chairman of the Arlington GOP. 80% of my neighbors will likely vote for Kamala Harris. But we are out here aggressively talking about our candidates and our principles. The photo that we tweeted out was submitted anonymously by a friend of the committee on Saturday. If this young woman pulled these signs from the early voting location, it is at the very least a misdemeanor. We have not identified her yet, but it is very easy. Last election day in 2023, I went viral for interacting with an unhinged progressive. We found out who that guy was within about 24 hours. So my committee is on the hunt for this person, but the second part of it is our prosecutor, our DA, our Commonwealth's attorney, as we call them in Virginia, is absolutely not going to prosecute this crime, even though she stood up, quote, a voter intimidation effort in her office, which is really just to scare Republican poll watchers. But we're going to raise awareness for issues like this because the party of tolerance, the party of acceptance, the party of diversity, as they call themselves in Arlington, is absolutely the opposite of all of those things. And every time we expose them for that, we go viral, and it brings more people into our tent. We've had so much encouragement, so many voters who have come to us and say, you know what, Kamala Harris is an empty suit, Tim Walz is dangerous, and we're ready to vote for Donald Trump.
I want to play for you some audio, of course. I don't know if you heard me talking about this note that was left by the would-be Donald Trump assassin, where, of course, we all know he failed. It didn't even get a shot off. But he did leave a note, and the DOJ decided that it would be a good idea to release this note where the guy basically said, I'll give you $150,000 if you finish the job. And there's a lot of people who just, including yours truly, couldn't believe that they would release this note because basically it puts a bounty on former President Donald Trump's head. And some people are saying this is all part of the psyop. They're trying to inspire someone else to try to take out the former president. But most people are saying that regardless of the reason why, at least most people with a lick of sense, regardless of the reason why, nobody can really understand why they decided to release this note. This is Eli Honig on CNN.
What the feds could have done in their brief, and I read it, it's a powerful brief, is just say, we recovered a letter from him, from his possessions, where he says this was an attempted assassination. That's it. Instead, they publish the whole letter, which to somebody who's unbalanced or dangerous could see that as some sort of call to arms. So I disagree with that tactic by the feds. I think it's counterproductive.
Yeah, and even William Barr, former attorney general for Trump, said and no fan of Donald Trump, by the way, says that he was dumbfounded that the DOJ made this public. What do you think of all this?
Yeah, this is really wild to release the text of this note because as you heard in the interview, there are people who are on the fringes mentally, many of them on the left, who do believe that Republicans are subverting democracy. There's a really great video on Twitter this morning that Elon Musk just tweeted out, mashing up quotes from Democrats and scenes from the Joker, basically where an individual is radicalized by these comments from left-wing politicians. And it is certainly something that we're seeing. If democracy is under threat, like they say, then that causes people who are on the fringes to say, well, I have to save democracy. And what we saw from one of the Lincoln Project co-founders on national television, he said somebody is going to have to put a bullet in Donald Trump. It is on television, yep. And this ad airs it over and over. And so you can see how someone could get radicalized to the point where they say, well, the only thing I can do to save democracy is to take this action. And to highlight the text of this letter, even with the financial incentive, obviously the guy's not going to be paying anytime soon. But with these details, it could push someone over the edge. And we've already seen 2 assassination attempts this election cycle alone on Donald Trump. So where does that leave Republican voters who are just going out to cast a ballot? Are we going to see violence at the polls because some unhinged leftist decides that he's going to take matters into his own hands against innocent voters?
It's crazy. Matthew Hurtt joining us on WTN. Matthew, I don't want to make too much of the polling. Yesterday, New York Times came out with a poll that said that Trump was doing well in several battleground states. Other polls saying that Pennsylvania is neck and neck. Other polls will say Pennsylvania, Harris is a little bit ahead, all within the margin of error. So on this Tuesday, September 24th, where are you at in this whole thing?
Well, Donald Trump is tied with Kamala Harris in Virginia, 45-45. In 2020, he lost by 10 points. Virginia is in play. Our governor and Donald Trump had a tele-rally on Sunday evening encouraging people to vote early. Donald Trump told people to vote early, so I encourage your listeners to do the same when early voting starts in Tennessee. But in Pennsylvania, the efforts to flip voter registrations just flipped another county, Lucerne County. Almost every county in Pennsylvania now has a majority of Republican registrations. And so we're seeing in states like Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and Ohio and Michigan, we're seeing those opportunities to build up the Republican base and then to turn out those voters. People are listening. People are looking for a message. They're looking for a messenger. And many first-time and new voters are looking at Donald Trump.
So real quickly, running out of time, but were you appalled that basically you have Vladimir Zelensky coming here and campaigning for Kamala Harris and deriding Donald Trump and J.D. Vance?
A former Trump administration official said that is definitely an FEC violation.
Yep.
I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on the radio, but it certainly raises some serious questions about foreign interference in our elections.
Somebody actually said it was an impeachable offense.
It's pretty ridiculous to have the leader of a foreign country come to this country and campaign on behalf of a major party candidate, for sure.
All right, Matthew, it's going to be a crazy ride. Tell me how can people find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Matthew Hurtt, MatthewHurtt.